However, the MonsterVerse's take on the Hollow Earth began in the movie Kong Skull Island and was expanded by King of the Monsters, which confirmed that humans and titans lived there in the past in total harmony. With the mysticism of the Hollow Earth comes many wonders and questions. Where is the light source coming from? What are the creatures, and how do they function in a world where everything is right side up and upside down? Is there weather and seasons? How do creatures get fresh air, and more? Today we'll be looking at the creature side of things. An overview, if you will, on the Hollow Earth creatures seen in Godzilla vs. Kong. The first living things we see on our journey to the center of the earth are quick flying creatures that look like featherless birds somehow flying with broken wings and a magic wand attached to their faces. They are also reminiscent of pterodactyls, and these creatures appear to be the same doohickeys that we saw on Skull Island at the beginning of the Godzilla vs. Kong movie. And they're most likely the same creatures we see sashiming that dude on Kong Skull Island. Leafwings, a subspecies of psychovulture. The leafwing is a species of avian reptile monster that first appeared in the legendary Kong Skull Island, and are also seen briefly in Godzilla King of the Monsters and throughout Godzilla vs. Kong. Leafwings have what amounts to a sword on their face, covered in spines. They get their name from the color of their wings, which are green, in order to help them camouflage by looking like tree leaves whenever they're in groups. The very fact that they have this camouflaging mechanism means that there must be predators that prey on them. Creatures usually adapt to have very practical camouflaging mechanisms like this when they are hunted. It's called cryptic coloration, and organisms use it to blend in with their surroundings. Likewise, cryptic coloration or camouflage can be used to hunt prey as well. Leafwings seem to pretty much leave larger creatures alone unless they're provoked. They don't go out of their way to hunt humans or easy kill unless the humans are provoking them. And they don't just attack everything that moves as some other creatures like the skull crawlers do. The group of humans could only helplessly watch as the surprisingly strong creatures flew off into the air with one of their comrades as the leafwings worked together to dismember and eat him in midair. That is one hell of a way to go. He still held on to the suitcase though. Takes a whole other level to the meaning, defend this with your life. Looking at these creatures, they seem to be very social and only stay together probably for defensive purposes, but also for hunting and camouflaging purposes. They literally need each other to survive. Even their camouflaging tactics don't work unless they're together in a group. In order for them to eat especially large prey, several of them will hold the limbs of a creature they are eating so another member can slice the prey into smaller pieces for each of them. We never really see these creatures fighting amongst themselves. While I'm sure that must happen from time to time, like humans, it seems as though because they depend on each other so much for survival, they opted to work together and ensure that every member is taken care of and has their share of food. Leafwings are also said to have thermal vision. But this is just an overview of the creatures of Skull Island. There would need to be a dedicated video to really go into detail of these creatures and theorize how they must have lived in their natural habitat. The next sexy serpentine monster is called Warbat. These magnificent gliding cobra-like creatures live in the Hollow Earth and seem to be apex predators, as they were ready to take on Kong with no holds bar. Just like the hood on a cobra snake, these creatures have spiny hoods with what looks like finger digits inside of them to not only allow them to fly, but to clamp around and suffocate their prey like a Venus flytrap. In that way, there is almost no escape. The hoods essentially make them living kites. Like the cobra as well, these creatures have an impressive set of fangs and are believed to have venom. Although we don't know how strong the venom actually is, because they did bite Kong in Godzilla vs. Kong and he seemed unaffected by it. It's possible that because Kong is a creature who is also considered an apex predator, that he has a biological advantage to have a higher immunity to their venom than most creatures that they probably hunt. Their body plan being long and slender allows them to expertly navigate through the treacherous terrain of the Hollow Earth, when in flight and on the ground. Based on the features of their eyes and their behavior, it seems these dragon-like entities predominantly hunt their prey via movement or possibly heat or both. They're also surprisingly stealthy. Because of their membranous neck wings, they're able to skillfully glide through the air, making little to no noise. You wouldn't even see these things creep up on you. All you would feel are knife-sized teeth sinking into to your soft ass, maybe firm if you do squats, and feel yourself getting yeeted into the air and then into the mouth of this thing before you realize it even grabbed you. Also, these guys will take on bigger prey and not only wrap their snaky body around that prey to constrict it and break all of its bones in an attempt to cut off its breathing, but also use its wing to cut off the breathing as they tried to do with Kong. Based on the little that we've seen of them in Godzilla vs. Kong at the time of this video, they seem to be ambush predators based on the fact that they fly silently, and also because they seem to be based on snakes, which are ambush predators. They clearly aren't the fastest moving creatures, and my guess is that they get as close as possible to what they want to eat and as quietly as possible, and then go for the kill, similar to what they did with the Apex anti-gravity vehicles in Godzilla vs. Kong the movie. We don't yet know how the day and night cycle really works in the Hollow Earth, but something tells me based on their ability to vocalize the way they do and because of the way their eyes look, that these creatures are also great nocturnal predators, who probably rely more on sound to hunt in the dark than vision. This makes them not only deadly in the daytime, but even more so in the nighttime or dark environments. It is also possible that Warbats live in caves or dark crevices in the Hollow Earth, due to their body plan being the perfect physical shape to weave through tight spaces. Warbats also seem to be social and either hunt in pairs or a pack. It's possible that the ones that we saw were a mated pair and we could see them enjoying their date by hunting together and working in cooperation with each other to bring down a threat or prey. That means their vocalization might not only serve the purpose for finding and locating prey or navigating their terrain in dark situations, but also in serenading to each other and communicating with members of their kind. And given that the massive concentration of energy within the Hollow Earth is so prevalent, Titans who originated from there are able to reach unspeakable sizes, it is possible that Warbats would just continue to grow until they die. As we also saw in Godzilla vs. Kong, Warbats are also very durable, as most kaiju seem to be, and not only could they take a few powerful punches from Kong, but also a few hits from our missiles. At most, the missiles were a mild annoyance, just like mosquitoes are to your neck. It is speculated that Warbats also have the ability to spray venom. If this is an ability that they do have, it is possible that they use this ability to blind larger prey before constricting them, and possibly even choking them with the venom as well. But I'm not so sure about this because they would have used it on Kong in this scene. But a lot of what we have to say about the Warbat from here on out is just speculation. Next creature that we see shortly after are what I like to call the Stony Crab monsters. As Kong is running through the Hollow Earth and making his way up the mountain, at the base of this mountain are what looks like ordinary rocks or pieces of terrain that come to life as these crab organisms. These Stony Crab monsters had been using what we talked about earlier with the leaf wings, cryptic coloration. Not just that, these creatures have adapted to look so much like the environment that they seem to become one with it, in the way that the kaiju from Godzilla King of the Monsters, named Methuselah, blended in to look like a whole mountain for many years. These creatures don't seem to be detrimental at all, and are only camouflaging to escape predation from larger creatures. It's possible that they're also keeping warm in those pockets, as you can see a slight red glow from the holes they just came out of. Shortly after the crabs were spooked from their nesting places, they immediately try to get out of the area that they thought was a great danger to them, and immediately get eaten by something bigger, probably the very thing they're camouflaging from. How lucky that that son of a bitch was there at that exact moment. Almost as though he were waiting for something large enough to disturb them so they could just pop up. Crabs in our world that usually live most of the time in the water can survive up to 2 days out of the water depending on the species. There are species that exclusively live on land called land or terrestrial crabs. Just like regular crabs, they have claws to use as a defense mechanism whenever they're captured, unless they're killed or disabled right away. While some species of crab in our world are solitary, there are some species that live in groups. A group of crabs is called a caste, and surprisingly, crabs that live in groups are very cooperative with each other and work together to provide defense and food. Since we saw a few of these stony crab creatures together, we can speculate that they either live together in groups because there is safety in numbers, or because they literally rely on each other like the leaf wings for camouflage. What's more probable is that these creatures probably stay together in groups in order to hunt if they need to, but also to breed. Hollow Earth is a dangerous place with many predators prowling about. I don't think we saw as many creatures as there probably are in the movie Godzilla vs. Kong, because the focus was supposed to be mostly on Kong. The prolific environment such as the Hollow Earth, where you have landmass and water on the ceiling and on the floor. Come on, this has got to be the Pandora on Earth, or in Earth. This means that there would be a host of predators ready to pick off these poor little crabs. They probably spend the majority of their lives in these rocky craters they built for themselves, so they can look like rocks and just wait for prey to pass by that's well enough for them to eat or tackle and possibly even swarm. Living in groups also ensures that if something big runs by and threatens them, while a few are killed and used as a distraction, the majority of them can get away and find someplace else to hide. When the creatures are disturbed and roam somewhere else, they probably go a few feet away and dig deep into another area and try to camouflage as rocks once more. While all of these rocks with legs are moving, several will stop moving in order to camouflage again, which would confuse whatever's after them, whose eyes would still be on the moving crabs. It's a great system, and of course it's not for the ones that get caught, but the fittest survive. Fastest crabs that can get away farthest the fastest will pass on their genes to speedier and healthier offspring. Which leads us to the very thing that fed on those delicious earth Krabby Patties, a mysterious four-legged carnivorous reptile. This peculiar monsterverse newbie is a large lizard whose face bears a resemblance to the much smaller bearded dragon. Its teeth and jaws are compact for crushing the rocky shells of the Stony Crabs. I imagine that a creature like this, who lived in the hollow earth, would not be picky with what it fed on, since most moving things have killer defense mechanisms, and if it makes its home on the mountain, it probably doesn't have a lot of food to choose from. I imagine this creature would have eaten fruit, insects, or basically anything it can catch, as well as carrion left over by other predators. As a matter of fact, the creature reminded me so much of a bearded dragon that I decided to look up what bearded dragons actually naturally ate. I know what people usually feed them in captivity, but what do they eat in the wild? Funny enough, bearded dragons are not picky eaters. With their strong jaws, they can clench and crush hard-shelled insects like beetles, just as we saw the crabbuster doing. Since bearded dragons also eat leaves, flowers, fruits, and the occasional small lizard or rodent, they are considered omnivores. And given the environment and how this creature feeds, I have a strong hunch that this is probably an omnivore as well, or a creature that is an opportunist and eats anything it can get its mouth around. But there is something even more interesting about this creature, and the more I looked at it, the more I kept thinking, where have I seen this creature before? In a movie about Kong traipsing through the hollow earth, we see other creatures pop up around him to give life to the world, and then it hit me. The coincidence is too strong with this one. We have seen this creature before in another Kong movie. One of my favorite creature movies of all time, King Kong, 2005. That scary creature is the Phoetodon, or the Photodon as some people call it. Its name means cruel stinking tooth, and it's a powerful, bulky crocodilian-like lizard from the jungles of Skull Island that relies on ambush and stealth to hunt its prey. The creature in that movie measured up to 20 feet long, which looks similar to the size of the creature we see in Godzilla vs. Kong, and it's possible that they can grow much larger. In King Kong 2005, the Phoetodon is a predator and scavenger that is well adapted to life prowling on the forest floor. The scoots along its back betray the species' common ancestry with crocodilians, but its snout is short and heavily reinforced for bone crushing and brutal territorial confrontations. While there are physiological differences in the two lizards, the Phoetodon and the crabbuster, it almost seems like the crab-busting creature is a callback to the Phoetodon. It's very likely that they could be the same creature, or it could just occupy the same role. After all, the design of the creatures in King Kong 2005 had a specific design where all their eyes looked like they just came out of a hot box, and they all have a wicked case of the eat meats. Of course, Skull Island is still featured in the Monsterverse, but the creatures are designed to look more palatable. The crabbuster seems to be a solitary animal, and based on its stubby legs and it sitting kind of low to the ground, it probably doesn't do a lot of traveling. It's quite possibly an opportunistic hunter. If it does hunt, it might be waiting weeks for something to come by or go after whatever is easy pickings. Or it probably lazily explores its territory for any other dead things that other predators left behind. The territory in which it lives does not look like it's popping in terms of action and stimulus, so it's fair to assume that the creature could go a very long time without eating and possibly even drinking. Whatever it does eat, it utilizes every drop of the energy from that food to carry on until it gets its next meal. Possibly the only time the crabbuster is social is when it has to go out of its way to attract a mate. These creatures probably live for a very long time unless they themselves are preyed on, and they don't seem to have any particularly outlandish means of defense. I can imagine that a creature like this, though it would have a wicked bite in terms of a bacterial ecology in its mouth, not only does it have bone-crushing power to easily sever an arm or leg off of a human in one swift bite, or take a huge chunk of metal out of a car, but it's possible, like the Komodo dragon, its bite can cause some nasty infections that could particularly be dangerous for a creature who has a weak immune system. As cute as this crabbuster looks, and as harmless as it seemed to Kong, I don't think humans would have any business being within 10 feet of these things. Now, moving onward. What would you get if you took a shaved owl and a mummified grandpa and mishmashed them together? Yup, this thing.
Holy fish paste!
In Godzilla vs. Kong is the first time we ever see these ghastly animals that clung to the ceiling of the caverns like naked vampires. Hellhawks, no, not the Marine Fighting Squadron, hellish hawk-like creatures that like to be left alone and in the dark and who also see humans as a tasty opportunistic snack if they become annoying enough to be noticed. Hellhawks resemble giant bats with vulture-like heads, talons, leathery wings, and armored backs covered with thin strands of hair. They are very reminiscent of birds with their beaks, their head shape, and the way they look with their wings at their sides. They also emit screeches that sound like birds, probably for an intimidation tactic or to communicate with the rest of the flock. Hellhawks are aggressive animals that seem predatory in nature, and they make their home in the caverns of the Hollow Earth. They seem to have adapted to see in the dark, and will usually study their surroundings and keep to themselves until they are agitated. Once they are rudely awoken from their nap, they will relentlessly attack and feed on whatever woke them up. With the aggression, a flock of chickens would show a cockroach that was stupid enough to take a shortcut through their nest. Even though hellhawks seem to live in groups, they are fiercely competitive with food, and it seems to be more of a survival of the fittest situation rather than a social cooperation kind of deal. They only behave as a swarm in defense, but when it comes to feeding, knives are up, and these guys will not hesitate to throw their hands or wings at each other to fight for their piece of the pie. It's probably because food is so rare and these guys are so high-strung that they have a sucks to be you type of attitude. Skullcrawlers seem to share the same kind of social behavior. Even though hellhawks are named after hawks, which are birds, they behave more like bats, in that they hang upside down and fly in a more chaotic manner when disturbed. Hellhawks hang or perch upside down to make it easier to take off during flight, and most likely because it's easier to get away if a predator is in the area. But to try and figure out the evolutionary reason as to why hellhawks are like this, we have to look at another creature that they are based on. Bats. Bats roost or perch upside down for several reasons. Unlike birds, bats cannot launch their bodies into the air from the ground because their wings do not produce enough lift to take off like a helicopter. A running start would help, but bats' hind legs are too tiny to give enough speed for liftoff. This leaves bats with no choice but to use their claws to climb to a high spot, let go, and fall into flight. If sleeping bats need to escape quickly, hanging upside down means they are already in the perfect position to spread their wings and fly away. The hellhawks probably operate much in the same way since their habitat is pretty similar to that of cave bats. They fall into flight and possibly land upside down, as we can see in this next clip, with a bat performing that action. We see something similar with the hellhawks, and this basically means that their evolutionary body plan allows them to escape quickly from danger, and also to get food very quickly. This is especially important since food is very rare where they are, and if they do not happen upon something, it would behoove them to not let it get away because they might not know where they'll get their next meal. Really makes me wonder whether or not they've actually eaten each other. They look like they have some serious The Hills Have Eyes shit going on. That's it for the creatures thus far. The Hollow Earth is a wondrous place, and it's also a very dangerous place. We know this because they have claimed that Skull Island, which itself is very dangerous, especially for humans, is basically Hollow Earth come to the surface. I have no idea how that works, and to me it just sounds like one of those inverted anus situations, so I can't actually see it in my head. But hey, it is what it is.
What it is.
That is it for now. Which monster is the most interesting to you? Which one would you think you'd be able to survive? Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. If you ask, we answer.